With us now to talk about what that may look like is former Chief of Defence Staff, retired General Rick Hillier. He was Canada's top soldier during the mass evacuation of Canadians from Lebanon as well in 2006. General Hillier, great pleasure to welcome you to the program. Thank you for making the time.
Hey, thanks, Vassy.
I wanted to ask you about the prospect of a ground invasion and why, in your estimation, the Israelis have held off on that until now.
Vassy, this is the most incredibly complex operation that will ever be undertaken. I can't imagine how difficult, how brutal, how complex, how sophisticated it has to be, and that's why they're taking their time. There are always three phases. Phase one is what we would call preparation of the battlefield. Phase two is the fight itself, and then phase three is what follows when you've won that fight. And they're not sequential. All three phases, in fact, happen simultaneously, just sort of slightly behind each other in step. And what we see now is the preparation of the battlefield, and that includes the strategic area. That includes making sure they're not going to be stabbed in the back if they launch into Gaza and be stabbed in the back by Hezbollah or the militias in Syria or some other Iranian-manipulated militia force. That includes making sure they've got the force structure in place to do it, and that includes making sure they've got the information and the intelligence about Hamas, where they are, who the leaders are. I know they have a vast amount of it, but they don't have it all, otherwise we wouldn't be here. And so they're doing that now, and including removing some of them. Then it's the actual fight itself, and you know, I go back in history and try to think of something that is remotely close to that. You know, Fallujah in 2004-05, that's just, you know, 1% of the complexity and difficulty of this. Stalingrad during World War II might be right up there. Canadians remember Ortona in Christmas of 1943, but even those Ortona and Fallujah are just minor compared to this. And I think what we're going to see here, you know, you rubble an area because you take out tunnels, you destroy the buildings where Hamas is hiding, where their headquarters are, but that means you create rubble that they can use as defensive positions. Your tanks, your mechanized vehicles can't get through that rubble easily. That means you have to dismount your infantry and bring them up close, and then the Hamas fighters will pop out of hidden spots and tunnels and shoot you in the back. And so you've got to do it in a painstaking fashion. And I think what they'll start doing is what I would call, and I go back in history to Passchendaele, bite and hold. And General Curry, our Corps commander, perfected this at Passchendaele, set up all the resources, take a piece of key ground, and then once you've got that, hang on to it, and then set that up to support you to the next piece of key ground, and then carry on from that. And you try to divide the Gaza Strip in the middle to start with, and then work the pieces one at a time, because you cannot do it all together. And then the worst, most complex part, what happens after. I mean, for Israel to stay there, I think it would be the worst possible solution. Can the Palestinian Authority run it again? I don't think so. Do we leave a vacuum and let Hamas come back in? That would sort of defeat every sacrifice. Is there a fourth option of somebody else overseeing, like the United Nations? Don't know. But it happens in those three phases. It takes a long time to prepare. The more preparation you have, the less lives you're going to lose on your side, the less innocent civilians will be killed, because you know more and more accurately where to target your weapons and your attacks itself. Right. It's going to take a while.
I want to just pick up on that point and the second phase that you mentioned, the fighting phase prior to what comes next. Based on the intricacies of Gaza, of the network of tunnels underneath, like how, I mean, not to put a specific amount of time, but do you anticipate this will be a protracted fight?
Yes, I do. This is not going to be an easy fight. This is an intensely sort of built-up area. We've seen all the videos and all the footage and all the rubble. We know underneath there are hundreds of kilometers of tunnels. The Israelis know where many of them are. They've targeted many of them, destroyed them, but not all. And so they'll be going after them. Fighting in a built-up area like this, particularly when it's rubbled, requires a huge number of troops, both dismounted infantry, reconnaissance, tanks, fighting vehicle, artillery, precision munitions to try and reduce to the extent the collateral damage and the deaths of innocent civilians, and to actually target Hamas terrorists and killers themselves. But it requires a huge number of troops, so you're not going to be able to go in and just take over the entire Gaza piece and then search down the leadership. You're going to have to do it, like I said, I think, you know, bite and hold, bite and hold, bite and hold, maybe go right down the middle to the Mediterranean to start with and divide it in two, and then use that approach of bite and hold. but it's going to be protracted. Hamas has got a lot of fighters there. They've got a lot of weapons, and they're prepared to fight, obviously. And the Israelis are going to have to take them out, you know, one tunnel at a time, one building at a time, one strong point at a time. It's going to be protracted and bloody.
If I could slightly switch gears just before letting you go, General, and ask about the possibility of this war expanding to another front, particularly the northern border with Lebanon. The defense minister in this country says 300 members of the armed forces and a 150 Polaris has now been sent over to Lebanon in preparation for the possibility that up to 17,000 Canadians may have to be evacuated. You presided as Chief of Defense Staff over the other biggest evacuation in our history in 2006. If there's one lesson learned from that experience that could lend itself to this one, what in your mind is it?
Well, I think it's early commitment, and I'm glad to see this right now. We're 3 weeks in, so really that's not early commitment. Our success was, I talked to the commander of our Special Force and said, go make this happen. And then working in conjunction with Foreign Affairs, with our men and women on the ground, with a bag of money, because you're going to have to bribe your way out of a variety of places, and with an audacity and a leadership and an intelligence and common sense that those young soldiers have. We did it in 2006, and credit to them. You need to have them on the ground. You need to have the plan in place, and believe me, the Canadian Forces has those plans in place. They're dressing them up as we speak, and then you need to have the vehicles and rally points. Then you need to have the vehicles and ships and planes to get them out of the area into some intermediate staging base, and then eventually back to Canada. And this is where, you know, Canada as the forces, we lack a big assault ship that we could put offshore and put 5,000 or 10,000 people onto it and drop them off in Cyprus and go back and do it again here. But you got to have people on the ground, you got to give them free rein to execute the mission, and you got to have a bag of money, and you got to have the support of a government with aircraft and vehicles and the support of allies, of course, to be able to make that happen. We can do it. We won't get everybody out, that's for sure, and it will take a while, and there is a significant risk to doing it.
Yeah, no small endeavor. General Hillier, really appreciate your insights this evening. Thank you so much.
Vassy, my pleasure. Thank you.